making sure we have good sound check and everything for the moment. And we're playing it by ear. We've never done this before. I'll let Harlan introduce himself in a second, but I think our game plan is to interview 3 guests associated with the conference. I will say in advance that the usual repartee between Harlan and I is for him to tease me a lot and for me to roll my eyes a little bit. But since we do that on audio only, see, this is fun.
I have no idea what he's talking about.
But since we do it on audio only, we're a lot safer that way. But I will.
I'm not allowed to do that today?
You're going to do it, I know.
Okay, I know.
I do want to say in
I
advance.
want to take a picture. I thought no one would show up. Like, wow,
Yeah, no.
this is amazing.
I do want to say in advance, though, that I've known Harlan now for 29 years. He is like the best big brother anybody could ever have. He has.
This is a strategy, so I don't say anything bad during
this. This is what I deal with every week. He can't take compliments. No, it has been really like an honor of a lifetime to work with him. I met him on my interview here. He has been both, a mentor. He's a role model.
You're gonna make
so
me
this
cry.
has been So this has been a lot of fun for us to do. We've been doing it for almost 3 years right now, and we never miss a week. I think both of us are afraid that if we skipped a week, somebody else would step in and we'd lose the.
I know he's going to replace me if I don't show up.
He does say that, and I think the same way. But it is a lot of fun working with him. And so we really want to just be able to replicate that today, be able to talk to the guests, and also, hopefully give you a little sense of what goes into even doing the podcast each week.
The magic that's involved.
The magic.
So now he said all those nice things about me. I do think that was a strategy to kind of tamp down any sort of. But you all know that Howie is like a legend at Yale. I always thought he's kind of like a Mr. Chip. There's no one quite like him. Honestly, the institution is so fortunate. All the students, I'm just amazed by how he invests in people. Like, that's the secret, right? Like, you just invest in people. And there are so many people at Yale who are like that, but there's only one, the Howie. So truly fortunate, and personally, you know how much I feel.
Appreciate it too. No, I really do.
So
I think we're going to start off with Josh Jabal, who I have known personally only for probably about a half dozen years or a little bit, but he's a legend here as well. He's a Yale College graduate. He's a Yale School of Management graduate. He is the former chief operating officer for the state of Connecticut, and really led our state through the COVID pandemic and response, and did so very quietly in the background while being extremely effective. And then he joined Yale in this job as deputy provost for, I'm just making up titles now, but innovation and ventures.
Now no one's going to believe anything on the podcast because you're just making up stuff.
I improvise. And really has brought together so much of the entrepreneurial spirit that exists at Yale right now. And what I wrote on a LinkedIn post this week I think is really true, and that is that you go back just 10 or 12 years, and Yale was lagging a lot of institutions in innovation and venture development. And now you look at where we are right now, and I think we're on the leading edge of innovation for any academic campus. And a lot of it is just during the brief period that Josh has been here. So we want to be able to talk to you a little bit. We can sit. We haven't figured out actually how we're doing it. And I think.
We're supposed to talk in the microphones.
Yeah, we have to talk into the mics. That's what they tell us. So we'll sit and we'll talk a little bit. Maybe you can just tell us when you first got interested in entrepreneurship and how that even came about, what it was like when you were here at Yale versus what it's like now.
Are we going to skip the part where you guys spend a few minutes talking about what's in the news and what you're
We're going to skip. We're going to do that in between segments. We're going to cover some interesting stuff.
I know. Big news for me this week is there's a Yale Ventures conference.
That's right. That is the news.
Blowing it up, is just like extraordinary. I'd like to figure that out.
Your pod has become a weekly part of my life, and so I'm waiting to hear what's on your minds and what's going on. But I'll wait for the recording to come out.
Yes.
So, we're grateful you guys are doing this here too. This is fun to have you at the Yale Innovation Summit. So the way I ended up in entrepreneurship innovation was out of SOM. I graduated in a dot-com bust and ended up getting a job at IBM and worked there for 11 years. But throughout that time was observing that the real innovation, the real changes that were moving the world forward were not happening at big behemoths like IBM. They were happening at these small, nimble, innovative companies, and that's where I wanted to go. And so I left after 11 years to become the CEO of a software startup that was doing scientific data management in the cloud, back when the cloud was new and scary. And we were fortunate to grow and ultimately be acquired by Thermo Fisher Scientific, and knew at that point that the next phase of my career in life was going to be about trying to give back to the startup community and this ecosystem. I had received so much support and mentorship throughout that journey, and everyone who's been through that knows how hard and lonely it can be. And if you have the luck to be successful, that we all have an obligation to try to give back and help others who are just embarking on that journey.
One of the things I really value in this world is social capital. And, you've really built a substantial, we talk about capital and investment, but really the social capital. I mean, you get the feeling in the hallways here. You put together a remarkable group of people who've executed on this. You've been able to move this. I would like to pay tribute, Howie, to for a long time there has been a commitment at the institution. And, John Soderstrom, who was a friend, contributed over the course of a career. What Josh did when he came in, I thought was sort of a startup. It was sort of a transitional time. And here's the question I wanted to ask for you, Josh, because you're giving advice to a lot of startups. You're helping to stimulate and catalyze a lot of action within the university. You have been enormously successful in this essential startup, right? Because you really made a transition from what it was to what it is and will be. What's your sort of guiding light around leadership and your principles around how do you get the most out of the people that you work with, and how do you set that vision for where you're going? I mean, what lessons do you have for us? Because really, when I look at what you've achieved, it's amazing. So I want to understand what were some of the secrets of that.
Well, thanks, Harlan. I mean, I think the common theme is that at our team at Yale Ventures is that we're a service organization, right? We're here to support you, our faculty, our students, the people at this university who have dedicated their life to drive the world forward through scientific research, through engineering, through other fields that will make a difference in the world. And, Harlan and Howie, you're great examples. Like, you're the leading scholars in the world in your domains, but many of your peers, you guys actually are not the examples here, where you have done startups before and you have entrepreneurial experience, but many of your peers don't. And so the opportunity that we have to step in with our team, who come from private sector often a lot of PhD scientists who have bridged industry and deep research expertise, can step in and help understand how to take those technologies out of the market, get them into a startup company, or get them partnered with industry where the investment can come in that's necessary to figure out if that can be scaled up to a product or a service that can cure a disease or can help impact climate change positively, or any other number of challenges that we're facing. So our goal as a team at Yale Ventures is just to keep looking for new ways that we can help our faculty and our students realize their goals, get the most real-world impact out of their research and their discoveries. So in that context, we should always think of ourselves as a startup. Like, I don't ever want us to think like we're done. There's so much more opportunity for us to do more to be helpful.
I love that spirit.
I wanted to go back to the work with the governor. The governor comes from an entrepreneurial background, is a businessman, and has done a lot to invest in the state of Connecticut using public dollars, but also have public-private partnerships of one type or another. What is the role of government in fostering entrepreneurship? Is it mostly to stay out of the way? Is it mostly there are times where regulation helps, there are times when regulation hurts. What is the role of government in fostering entrepreneurship? And how, having seen it from both sides now, so to speak, what have you learned about what could be done better?
Sure. Well, the government plays so many important roles in innovation. Needless to say, the vast majority of the research that goes on here is federally funded, right? Funded through public sources. And so without that support, the work that we and other research universities could do would be, incredibly limited. So that's critical. But more kind of localized to, Connecticut, New Haven, Governor Lamont and his team have been incredibly active in trying to help ensure that we have the infrastructure here so that when new ideas come out of Yale and when new startups are formed, it becomes a no-brainer for them to stay. 10 years ago, you were reflecting on kind of the journey that we've been on. It used to be that most of the startup companies that spun out of Yale left town and went up to Cambridge, Massachusetts, because they had the density of talent and lab space. Today, we're really happy to report that most of the companies we spin out stay in New Haven. And that's because there's been almost 2 million square feet of commercial lab space built over the last decade. And the state played an important role in that. Private investment played an important role in that. Yale played an important role in that. And through, a couple decades now of companies growing, succeeding, sometimes failing, but the talent sticking around, we now also have the critical mass of talent that those startups can stay here, find the employees that they need, the skills that they need to scale and be successful. So I think that's the main area where we count on the state to kind of help seed the infrastructure that we need to have those resources for our startups.
I don't want to neglect the opportunity on the podcast. Those of us sitting in the room can feel the energy at this conference and the buzz that exists here in New Haven. Yale Ventures has been just such an important part of that. I hear time and time again, people are now cheerleading about New Haven. People used to be joking about New Haven. You don't hear that anymore. I mean, what you hear people talking to you in the hallways and around the water cooler is, saying that, can you believe what's going on here? Can you believe that new restaurant? Can you believe what's growing and the way in which the place is feeling stronger and better? Has to do with a whole range of things, but really, Josh, I just want to give tribute to kind of energy and vision that's being provided from Yale in a very positive and collaborative way with the community and the government in a way that I've never seen before. And it feels great. I mean, I was here as an undergrad in 76 to 80, and it was a very different moment in terms of what downtown was like, and then when Macy's and Mally's closes, and the whole thing is just feeling like it people are calling it the armpit of America. You heard people say that. They're not saying that. Now people are saying, how do I get here? How do I build something here? And it's amazing, and your work there is. Here's a quick question for you, which is, you reach a lot of entrepreneurs. What I find is that bridging expectations is really important. Everyone's got in their mind the 7 people in Instagram who walked off with $2 billion on a quick, after just sitting there and making a quick app, that worked really, really well. And thinking that was easy, that people just got together and I go to hackathons and people are thinking we can get together with a group and we're going to parlay this into something big. How do you manage both maintaining people's excitement and investment in trying to make something real and big with helping them to understand there is no easy path on this journey? Like the journey you're embarking on is going to be harder than you think because, it's just, there are just so many things to overcome in being able to get there.
Yeah, it is a fine line that I think we all walk, right? We want to encourage people to take risks, right? To try to think about how their ideas and their discoveries can make a difference in the world. That's how we move the world forward. That's part of, I think, what we're supposed to be doing at a place like Yale. But at the same time, be very clear with people about what's entailed in that, and thinking about the timing and the sacrifices and the struggles that come along with that, and what role, whether it's a student or a faculty member, like what role they might want to play in that journey, and what the timing in their personal circumstances might be. So there's an educational component we do, both in terms of direct support with people, bringing in speakers who have been through these journeys and can talk about the struggles, both the successes and the failures. But ultimately, we're all doing this work because we're excited about supporting these people who do want to take the risks and do want to lean into it. We just want to make sure they're prepared and they know what they're getting into, because it is, as you point out, a substantial commitment.
It's not for the faint of heart.
So I want to ask a different question from the government question, but really the mirror image of that, and that is that Yale makes strategic investments in programs as well. Yale thinks about whether they're going to build a climate program or build out the entrepreneurship programs, even Sci Center, and who they're going to accept donations from. Really, decisions are made that factor into where the university goes. And you don't, from an entrepreneurial point of view, you don't like institutions picking and choosing winners. You sort of like them coming up organically. But how do you facilitate that in a way that serves institutional objectives while also allowing, blades of grass to flourish and to grow over time?
Yeah, so a couple things. Our philosophy at Yale Ventures is we want to have some amount of support that we can provide to everyone at Yale, whether you're faculty, student, no matter what domain you're working in or innovating in. It's important to us that we have something to offer you that is helpful. And so to serve that, we created something called Venture Labs, which is a platform of services, mentorship, pitch coaching, student fellows who can work on projects, do market research, when you're ready, connections to investors and those sorts of things that are accessible to the entire Yale community. But where we do see critical mass of innovation that has gotten to the scale where it is deserving of more support, we've been very fortunate to get some significant gifts to the university that have enabled us to create accelerator programs that can provide translational research grant funding to help get that technology advanced to the point where venture investors have seen enough de-risking where they're ready to invest, and we can pack in around those particular projects with even more mentorship and support to help get them ready to launch. And so we have programs now in therapeutics, in digital health and medical devices and diagnostics, more recently in engineering, and we're working to scale some more as we see the volume of innovation in climate technology and AI, quantum computing continue to explode here at Yale. There'll be more accelerators that we'll hopefully add in the near future. So we have this kind of two-tier model, but we do want to make sure that we've got support for everybody who's trying to innovate.
So this, one last question, because we're going to have several guests. Sure. So looking into your crystal ball, we got a new president coming, where I think, by the way, buzz about that. Everyone's excited about this new president. She seems great. Yes. And so where's this going? Crystal ball, looking out 3 to 5 years from now, we're going to be interviewing you at a conference like this. This conference, what's it going to look like? What's it going to feel like in New Haven? What do you hope will have been accomplished by the time we get 3 to 5 years out?
Yeah, well, the fun thing about what we do is there's no limit on where we can go, right? This is uncapped in terms of the potential. The faculty at Yale are never going to stop. They're never going to run out of new discoveries or new ideas or new things that we can help work on. The students that we import from all around the world every year just are absolutely amazing, are always going to be generating new, incredible ideas. So there is no endpoint in mind. It's just doing more and more to help support those innovations, give them the chance to have an impact in the world. You know, relative to this particular event, you know, we'll have probably about 2,500 people here between yesterday and today. It's growing at an incredibly fast rate. You know, as we've expanded now to 5 tracks of programming, we'll think about, you know, further expansion opportunities in the future. But I think this is an important event too to keep an eye on as a platform to bring people together, right? Because we are in a smaller city, even though the city's growing fast, you know, we do have to work a little harder to get the investors here, get the industry here, and create the environment where those collisions can happen. And one of the things we love the most about this event is the companies that are founded from co-founders who meet at this event, or the seed rounds or the Series A's that happen from the pitch competitions where the investors are seeing the startups. And we've got countless examples of those now over the last couple of years, so we'll do more and more of that as well.
And I'll just say what I'm hoping also is that increasingly we'll be able to see our role as faculty, the translation aspect of our work, the idea that we're creating something, and of course in healthcare in particular, we're seeing that translated for the benefit of patients and populations, and that this is a pathway. In fact, the faculty get credit for finding ways to see the translation of their work into practice, and that this isn't seen as other, different, separate, but it's actually intrinsic to our commitment to ensuring that the science and knowledge that we create actually gets to helping people. And these businesses are critical for being able to do that.
Yeah, so. Well, I'll tell you just as an anecdote, I see this almost every week in the faculty that we're recruiting right now, who very frequently want to talk to me before they have offers from our peers, and they're sizing up where they want to go. And they're the experts, and they are so passionate about their area of research, but they have very detailed questions too about what we'll do to help support them if and when they get to the point they want to launch a startup, because you can see they want to have that kind of real world impact out of their research. And I'm really encouraged that seems to be a really strong trend in a lot of the junior faculty that we're hiring right now.
That's terrific.
Well, we are really fortunate to have you here. I want to point out, like for the audience, if you would have asked me when to do a conference like this, I would have said do it during the school year. You want to have more people. I look out here, you have a lot of students, a lot of alums, a lot of community leaders, and you have people coming from far and wide
all over the world
here as well. So it is a huge accomplishment. I think if you had it during the school year, you wouldn't have the space for it. So
yeah. Well, I want to say thank you to you guys too for doing this podcast every week. It's another element of the tapestry of innovation at Yale that I think really helps highlight a lot of the great things that are going on here. And you guys are both exceptionally busy people, so the fact that you pump out a new great podcast every week is a real service to the community as well. So
we
thanks.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for the promotion.
For being here. Yeah.
Thanks. Good to see you.
Great to see you.
So we're going to segue now to Marianne Melnick, who I first met, I'm going to say now, 6 years ago or something in that time, and who at that time was working for Yale, I think Yale New Haven Hospital, or maybe the Yale University, for the Cancer Center, which is university-based. So at Smilow Cancer Center, but working for the university, and you were in a program management, clinical trials type role. I'm sort of improvising again like I do. But you decided you wanted to do a management degree. I don't think you knew exactly what you wanted to do next. And we'll come back to your career trajectory a little bit, but I'd love to hear what it is that you're doing at BioLabs that sort of fulfills your personal mission in terms of where you wanted to go.
And what is BioLabs?
Yeah, yep.
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me here. As Howie mentioned, I'm an alum of the program, the Executive MBA program, so it's such an honor to be back here. Anytime I can come back.
Howie
to
was your
SOM.
teacher?
He was.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's how the link, yeah.
So to be able to come back here and contribute to the community in this way is really, truly an honor. So what is BioLabs? So we are a global organization that operates serviced and equipped wet lab facilities that are meant for early stage life science startups to come into our spaces and launch really quickly. Our offering enables our startup companies to come in and really start their operations very quickly, like I said. When we moved over from our interim location in West Haven, Connecticut to downtown New Haven in the heart of the bioscience ecosystem here, over at 101 College, we moved over on the day before. It was a huge snowstorm. We moved in, and one of our resident companies was able to move their things in and start their science that same afternoon. So we're very flexible in that way. We provide that environment for our companies to come in and really start their operations quickly, and they can grow organically within our space as well because of the flexible nature of our offering.
And it's amazing space, by the way. I mean, how many square feet is it? And just to remind people, it's like the second floor to the third floor of the new building.
Right, so we're at 101 College Street, across from the Alexion building. We're on the second floor. Our neighbors will be Yale Ventures. We have a total of 50,000 square feet. We've built out 41,000 of incubator space that can be the home for up to 25 companies. And then we also have 9,000 square feet of space right now that we're eventually going to build out into what we call graduate suites, which are something like spec suites in the real estate community. That's how people often know it. Of 60% lab to 40% office space, and it's all inclusive for individual companies to have their own private space.
Great.
You know, I remember 5 or 10 years ago, and Howie may remember this, there were discussions around here saying, how can we become Cambridge? And by the way, we weren't talking about Cambridge, Massachusetts, we were talking about Cambridge in the UK, because they really were able to create sort of an energy within Cambridge, UK. And the towns are about the same size, of course, very different in their nature. But the question was like, well, we don't have, how are we going to get the capacity? If we get people in, how are they going to be able to find places to work? And this is what you're solving for. Well, I always had this feeling like, okay, build it and they will come. Are they coming?
Yes, they are. There are so many different types of companies knocking on our door, very interested to get started. They're, of course, in different stages of their growth and their development. Some of them are just starting with their ideas and just looking to see what's available in the market for them to start their companies. And then we have some that have been around for a while. They're thinking of growing. They've outgrown their current space. They're looking to be more central in downtown New Haven, where there's all that buzz. So yes, they're
And you must be competing when people are looking with all these other places. You know, they're looking Kendall Square, they're looking all a bunch of different places. Why are people coming here? What's made the change? What's the big difference?
For one, I can't overstate it enough. This environment is so much more efficient in the way, like in Kendall Square, yes, you have that critical mass, you have the talent, you have the investors, you have the ecosystem around you, but here, let's be honest, it's cheaper, right? It's cheaper. You can take your money further here in this environment. And like Josh mentioned, there's a lot of talent here, and there's so much fantastic science coming out of Yale. And you've got a lot of brilliant minds around here. And that's the ecosystem. And everyone that's a player in this ecosystem is very much supportive of it. We've got Advanced CT, we've got BioCT, all those groups that really want to see this community grow and thrive. And so does Biolabs.
So, you know, and one of the things that strikes me, and you said it already about how quick it is to set up, but like you have extremely scalable effects there. You're in charge of this operation down there. It's an enormous operation in itself. Like we don't think about what it takes. You think about what it takes for a single business to be able to scale, but you don't think about what it takes to oversee what really is an incubator, accelerator, physical space. What are the key skills that you have to use every day to be able to make something like that work?
That's a good question. So we like to bring in a diverse community of companies for many reasons. You know, we all know that diversity just makes for a better, richer environment. So top of mind, when you have a lot of different types of companies doing different types of things within your space, you have to be able to manage that, to make sure that everyone can get along. You know, we do offer shared resources. So we do have companies, prospective companies that come in and they're concerned. Well, how can I get access to this piece of equipment? How will you manage that? How do you protect my IP in this space? And those are the things, we're proud to say our community here in New Haven, one of the top things that they really love about being in Biolabs is it's a secure environment. They don't have to worry about their IP being stolen. Why is that? Because it's a collaborative community, for one. Two, everyone is really focused on their company. They really want to push their deadlines, and they want to get to their milestones. So they're focused on what they're doing. And so it's being able to manage those different types of workflows and making sure it's in harmony. So I would say that is one of the biggest things that someone in my role will need to make sure is in place every day.
And just one quick follow-up to that. Biolabs is part of what, like about 12 different sites, something in that range?
So New Haven is the newest US-based site. We're the 11th. We also have 3 sites in Europe, in Paris and in Saclay and in Heidelberg. And then we have a collaboration in Japan, in Kawasaki, Japan.
And do they work together at all, or are they just so independent that you just learn from one another, but you're really working? What I mean to say is, do you ever find a situation where you're building out a separate office for somebody in one of the other biolabs because you want to be in a separate location as well?
So we do have within our network of sites across the U.S. and in Europe and in Japan, what our resident members can do is utilize the facilities at one of our other locations. So we do have a company, for example, here that's stationed here in New Haven, and they have investors up in the Boston area. If they need to meet with their investors, they can go ahead and use the facility up in Boston. Of course, we want them to stay here, and they do. And in fact, it's a company that started with us. They've been so successful. They're currently building out their own space, and so they are committed to staying here in New Haven, and we're really excited about that.
We must be the best biolab site of all those sites.
Absolutely, because we're the newest.
Yeah.
It's state-of-the-art space.
And because you're leading it.
Thank
Let
you.
me ask you this: what percent capacity are you with it? Like, you know, how full are you?
So we do have space. It's a huge space. Like I said, we can take in 25 companies in our space. We have 17 private labs. About a third of them are already taken up, and then we have a couple in the pipeline that are interested in, you know, gobbling up some of the other private space. And then we also have 30 open benches in the open lab setting. And I didn't crunch the numbers. We're probably about a third full there as well. And then we also have shared office and private office spaces as well.
Are we at the point yet where a group that wasn't founded in New Haven is looking around the country to see where should we go and are actually coming to New Haven because they're seeing that this is the most favorable environment to actually grow a company? Are we there yet?
Yes. Yes.
Wow.
One of the companies we recently met has gone through our process. So we do have a selection process to make sure that the companies that we bring into the space are not directly competing with one another. That's another way that we make sure that there's harmony in our community. They're a Paris-based company, and they're looking to have U.S.-based operations here, and they're interested in starting soon within Biolabs. And then we also have another one that's UK-based. They're also looking to bring some of their operations stateside here in Connecticut.
So I just want for the audience to even understand, like, when you're developing something in the lab at Yale, let's say, and you've developed new technology and you've gotten to the point where you've gone to the lawyers and you've gotten a patent, you're securing the intellectual property and you're talking about commercializing it, you're filing to become a corporation. At what point are you sort of forced to move out of your Yale space and into a private space? Like, what is the thinking that goes into it? How do we facilitate innovators to be able to continue their career but also move? Because one thing, the committee I sit on, which is the Conflict of Interest Committee, which sounds like a very boring committee, but in fact is really where all the entrepreneurship is discussed, has shown me that there are an awful lot of people that have to make that decision. Do I leave Yale, take a leave of absence, and become a chief executive officer? Do I hire a chief executive officer? Mm-hmm. Where do you come into that decision making? Are you able to help them in that way?
For the most part, we don't necessarily get involved into the weeds of that. We provide the space and the facility, and like I said, make it very easy for someone to be able to come, because we're directly across the street from the Yale School of Medicine. They can come right across the street, maybe put on their entrepreneur hat for half the day, go back to their academic lab the other half of the day, and kind of keep that separation there between what is their federally funded research versus what they're trying to do and commercialize. So in that regard, we provide the facility that hopefully, because it's, it's the way that we've designed it and built it, it makes them want to come over to 101 College and be in the space and keep that separation from their academic lab.
And you've had, I think, at least one of your tenants is a PhD student from Yale, or at least a recent PhD student who has a startup of her own. Can you just tell us, like, what that's like to watch somebody go from being a student at Yale with her own IP and being able to commercialize it under your roof?
Well, it's sounds cliche, but it's amazing. We have 12 resident companies in our space now. To watch them grow from 1 or 2 people and then grow their team 3-4-fold within our space and then hit their milestones and then maybe get to the point where, like I said, this one company is now building their own space. It's very rewarding to see that, and that's exactly what we're here for, to enable that kind of growth within the community and make it easy for these startups to survive. Because Josh mentioned, there's a lot of risk when you create a startup and launch it, and we help by lowering some of that risk. They don't have to take on these long leases and then get locked into it. What do we do if the company fails in a year? They don't have to worry about any of that stuff. So to be able to see them grow within our site, it's almost like watching your child grow, and watching them graduate. You just feel that sense of, wow, this is why we're here. This is what our purpose here is to enable this.
Great. One of the things I wanted to ask is, we're talking about all the positive momentum. To get us to the next level, to actually get us to be the place in the country to do that, what are the things that need to happen?
Well, I think we have the mix now of academia, industry, and then government as well, all wanting to see this really work out. One of the big things I think we need more of is the investments into this community, and to bring some of those Boston-based dollars down here to get their attention and see that we matter, and we will make a big splash. We are making a big splash.
How about the health system? I mean, to me, it's like the other piece to this, which is whether or not we can see Lee Schwam here, so I'm trying to get his attention too. It's like, our chief innovation officer and data officer. We're making up titles. It's something like that. So, to me, it's also I don't want to say untapped because it is being leveraged, but it's still, you take the university and you take really remarkable healthcare system, and then, all the things in infrastructure that's being built. Are there openings for that? I mean, I know these are all largely basic science, but still there's a need to be able to coordinate with clinical sites and so forth. What do you think?
Yeah, yeah. So you're right in that most of our companies across our network are within that preclinical stage of development. I would say where it would be helpful is enabling those connections to say Yale New Haven. If these companies are at the stage where they're ready to start launching clinical trials, maybe finding that path where they can start making those connections. Some of them may have not gone through clinical trials before, and they're about to, maybe in a
Recruitment for
year or
phase
two.
1 and
Right.
first in-person
Exactly.
studies and
Right.
things like that, yeah.
Right.
Just one last question, and this may be unfair for you, and feel free to just put it off, but it may have been better for Josh. But, where you're located is maybe 1,000 feet away from Gateway Community College, and Southern Connecticut State University is probably 2.5 miles away as the crow flies. How much are you able to take advantage of that talent and/or to help encourage them to have programs that provide you with the labor that really helps entrepreneurs be successful?
It's almost like you planted that question because we are working with.
So it's not unfair.
It's not unfair. Biolabs is working closely with our developer and the City Economic Development Group. We will have a high school STEM program within our facility for that purpose, to really attract the students here in New Haven to go into this business, to train them, show them what it is that's possible, what's here. And 101 College is a beautiful, brand new, big building in their backyard. And they should feel like this is a part of their community, that they can come in here. This is their future as well. So that program will start off in the fall within our space. And the idea is, it also interweaves with Southern Connecticut University as well. There'll be instructors from that program teaching the high school students here, the New Haven Public School students here. And again, it's creating that space for them, a welcoming environment that I can be a scientist too here in New Haven, and look at the companies that are here in New Haven that my future could be in one of those companies.
I just want to ask one final thing. So your career's been a bit of a juggernaut. I mean, this is incredible. It is a bit of a startup, even though it's within a big company. You're doing this. It must sometimes be all-consuming.
Yeah.
What are your tips to people who are listening about, what has been sort of the best guiding principles for your career that has helped you to sort of navigate this and be as successful as you are, but not be overwhelmed by the number of tasks and things, when you're starting off like this?
Yeah, thank you. I think it's taken me some time to really think, well, what's driving me every day? Why do I go to work every day and work so hard? I think one of the really big and important things for me is when, going through the EMRA program, I really wanted to stay here in New Haven. When I first moved here 14 years ago, I thought to myself, oh, I made a mistake. We're gonna leave here in a year. But no, we've stayed 14 years. 14 years in, and my husband's in the audience. He's like, let's think about leaving New Haven. I'm like, no, I'm gonna stay here. I'm gonna stay here.
That's a negotiation tactic.
I was like, I'm gonna stay here. Look at what's happening. I want to see how I can help the community here and give back. So that's been sort of my grounding principle. I see all of the change that's happened over the 14 years of living here. And there's just so much potential, and to be a part of that change and transformation for this town, I think it's an honor for me to be a part of that. And
We are honored to have
doing
you.
the business
Yeah.
and society mission here,
Yeah.
I feel like my role is fulfilling that.
Yeah,
That's
we're
terrific.
Very
Yeah,
fortunate. to
thank
have
you so much.
Thank you so much. All right, so we're going to improvise now for a couple of minutes because we somehow our other guest who we've been in communication with
Ghosted
during the week
us.
has
Ghosted
not showed
us.
up now yet, but we're still going to count on it.
He is
but
coming?
I don't know.
All
I don't
right,
know.
all
We're
right.
still. Do we have?
All right.
You have a suggestion? I know. So I think that's what we're going to go to. But I want to just for 1 minute. I wanted 1 minute just so you and I can talk
okay.
a little bit about entrepreneurship.
Okay.
But that's the idea.
Okay.
I think we don't talk about it on the podcast at all, really, but you are an entrepreneur. And you have several companies that you're involved in right now, one larger one. Rather than talk about the company itself, because I think that could take a long time, and we probably should do that in a full podcast at some point, I want to know what have been the challenges that you have faced. Like what is difficult about it? What's been rewarding about it? A little about, how that has been for you as somebody who's a faculty member and also an innovator.
Well, let me say, I think I've always had an entrepreneurial mindset, even to my career, and what that means is that you're constantly looking for problems to solve, and you're trying to figure out how to do that, and you're trying not to be constrained by the way things are. In fact, you're trying to actively resist the socialization that says this is what it is, and we've got to accept the way things are. And it's the kind of thing like, what is water? It's so easy for people to be in their current situation and not to be able to pull themselves out, and you say, so much of this doesn't really make sense. And we've got to do better. And to then recognize, what is it that really needs to be done in order to do that? So then you get ideas that you want to pursue, and you try to figure out what you do. With regard to the actual development of companies, I would say I was pretty naive at the beginning. That's why I was asking Josh about expectations too. It's sort of like, it can't be that hard. It's hard. It is hard. Because, you're either lacking capital, you got, who are you working with? You want to be able to test out ideas with customers. You're mission driven. From all people that we know that are in this space, they're not willing to sacrifice. Like, a win is not transforming a company that makes money. That's not enough. That's not what the whole thing is about. So you're actually trying to impose additional requirements. No, this has to move the world in a positive way. This has to have an impact on people's lives in ways that shows that whatever effort has been made has paid off for people. So that, by the way, that's not what, when you start talking to investors, I've learned, don't lead with that. There are really great investors who really care about making the world better, but they also have their own responsibility to show that they can make money for the people who have given them the money to invest. And so they would be irresponsible for them to basically be carried away with the idea of how they should be working at a philanthropic organization if that's singularly what they're trying to do. And the reason, by the way, that I drifted in this direction was, I'll admit, I was a little anti-business for a while, in my career. And that was because I saw stuff in pharma that was really a turnoff to me. And I got involved in the Vioxx litigation and stuff like that, and where it seemed like the business of it overtook the mission of it. By the way, now you could say that a lot about sometimes healthcare delivery is often susceptible to that same thing. But then I started recognizing this magic word, sustainability. If you've got an idea and you want to help people and you want to see it actually continuously work and doesn't require people to make donations to do it, and here's another thing, 2 words, are you creating value? Are you actually creating value? And I started realizing also, within academia, what we start doing is getting credit for papers or grants, but we should be doubling down on really rewarding people who are creating value for society, value for, in every different way that value can be created. And that's what drew me to it. You back to how hard it is. Oh my God, you have doubts all the time. Is this going to turn out? Is something going to happen? And there's so many things you can control, and there's so many things you cannot control. Timing and, serendipity and just getting that critical momentum, getting that critical mass. And you're also getting people to take risks with you. The people who are working with you are spending their time, effort, often their entire careers with it. And the one thing I started with my wife, it turned out, it was amazing to work with her. She is the most remarkable person I've ever met in my life. I love her so much, but she's so talented, and she helped move this forward. Well, it subsumed a lot of our conversations for a long time, about what's going on. So, like I said, it was not for the faint of heart. You have to be a believer. And you have to, I believe in our area, you have to believe that at the end of the day that's worth it, because people who you'll never meet will benefit from the ideas that are going to be put into action. And you're willing to fail. You're willing to say, I don't know how this is going to end, but I'm all in to try to see how it goes. And I also think on career side that works too, Did
you think when you first went into it, before you even first went into it, that entrepreneurship was easier than it's turned out to be? Or were you realistic to it at the beginning? Because I have to say, when I talk to people, everybody always talks about the winners, and they think that everybody can have a winner. And when I look out there at the landscape of all the people I've known over the last 28 years at Yale, it's awfully hard to have a successful.
The real stats are stark and depressing, you know, about the number that get started and finish strong. You have to know that the journey is one that enriches you through the process, the people you meet and the things you do, so that that has its own rewards. Yeah, of course I did. Are you kidding me? Like you look at Jobs and Zuckerberg, and then I did say the Instagram people. I mean, it's like, let's get together in a hackathon, and 2 weeks later we can, exit, and then, can make a big deal and help people. It just, I always thought about this every project in my academic career too. It's like when you get to the end or even the middle and you look back at how far you went, you go, if I ever knew what this took when I started, like you never would start anything, because it just like, you get started and you get just like you can do more and more, but I don't think I had any idea what it really took. And the people who succeed, everyone who's an overnight success,
that's right,
is an illusion.
Yeah, exactly. They work very hard at getting lucky. Yeah.
And there's decades, or it's just, and I'm so happy when I see somebody who stuck with something, and then like after I met someone last year, 20 years in, then the thing just took off, what they had been working on all that time. And again, sort of like the NBA, you look at the people playing in the finals and you go like, yeah, I want to be that person, but you don't realize, there are a million people who are trying to be that person.
To get into it. So we're going to segue to bring Lee Schwam up here, but since he's...
I wanted to spend a whole episode on Lee Schwam.
I know.
But now we got him only for 10
No, but we
This
are.
is a taste. This is a taste.
I'll talk fast.
So we will. We're going to spend the whole episode with you in about 7 weeks, I think. So we're not going to steal that from us now. But I wanted to hear from you, rather than spend time talking about your career today. We'll do that at the end of July. I want to hear you tell us about how does the medical school, how does the medical center facilitate innovation? Rohan Kara got the Medical Center Yale New Haven Award yesterday. There are other people getting Blavatnik Awards. But where do you come in terms of facilitating innovation in digital transformation?
It's almost like he was at dinner with us yesterday. Harlan and I were at
I channel whatever goes into Harlan's head eventually comes to me. So.
I think I was just really grooving on what you were saying before, but there's a huge untapped opportunity here, and it's one of the reasons why I was so excited to come. What we have right now, I feel like, is a lack of an orchestration layer around innovation. Like when I was interviewing, I said, I'd love to meet the people doing, running innovation at Yale, and they were like, well, how much time do you have in your schedule? Because I found at least
Past the thousands.
Yeah, I found at least 6 groups with the name innovation in their title, and then there were about another, 5 or 10 more. There's so much innovation going on. Harlan and I were yesterday when we were talking, I met a colleague at a collaborative who worked in Disney as actually like a design engineer for Disney, and now is working for a big health system. And he said at Disney, their definition of innovation was ideas we do. And I think there's just there's an unfathomable amount of innovative ideas around universities and medical centers. Everyone has ideas. This thing isn't working. I wonder if there's a better way to do it. But the difference between that and what you just sort of said about your journey to getting to actually a sustainable solution that users adopt and users embrace, not resent, but actually embrace.
And creates value.
Yeah, that funnel gets narrow very quickly. But I think right now we have a lot of bottom-up innovation. People are just coming up with ideas all the time, and then a lot of them just are dead on arrival when they hit the health system because it's not a need. What we really need to start doing, and not to we don't want to suppress that innovation, but we want to try to nurture it a little bit by saying, here are the problems that we're trying to solve. Here are the things that really need to be solved where there's a huge value opportunity or a gap. And boy, would we love some smart people to try to think about how to do this. And it's more than a hackathon, right? As you said, hackathon is sort of anyone can go to a hackathon and throw out some ideas. It's really cultivating a community of investigators who want to work on problems that are relevant to the healthcare system. Now, there's a lot of healthcare that doesn't happen inside healthcare systems either. So you may have great ideas about solving the problem of how to get to and from the doctor's office. Like that's not a health system problem. That's a patient problem. But I think there's a huge opportunity, and we've just started to put the pieces together to say, can we create some kind of a working group? And I wouldn't call it a committee because it won't get anything done. Just a working group of representatives from a lot of the innovation communities, the health system, and probably folks from like Treasury and Finance, and because you got to put money into some of this stuff to actually make it happen, and start to have this conversation of what are the most important things right now for the health system, tempered by the fact that the most important things for the health system are making money right now because margins are so poor because of COVID. It has to be times or, to the integral of greatest impact.
So this is a question, because I heard a lot of people who want to try to sell ideas to health systems. And one of the questions that comes up is whether or not, do I have to make a pitch about how they either save money or make money? Or if I've got an idea that will cost efficiently improve outcomes, is that right now a hard sell? Because, even if they'll get a return for patient outcomes, it's just not the moment in time to do it. And when people are coming to you for advice, I've got a great new thing and, blah, blah, blah. How do you guide them about how they should approach a health system?
So let's just assume for the moment that the product will actually work and that people will adopt it and that the integration lift is not that big. The first question is going to be...
By the way, those are
huge.
And I'm really glad you said them, because some people say, I've got this thing, and
Dead on arrival. Dead on arrival. So let's just assume that that's the case.
That's the first thing they have to pay attention to.
They have to...
Will people adopt it? What's the implementation layer? What else did you say?
Integration layer and I don't remember the third thing.
Doesn't work. Doesn't work.
Right.
Yeah,
Listen,
Something small like that.
is it plausible?
no, but these are really important, right? Have you validated it?
Right.
Have you done it in one sequestered environment and said it works,
or
and you haven't
even
really
just
tested it?
in like a data mart or something. But does it sound plausible?
Yep.
Right? Oh, I have this magic equation. You plug it in and it cures cancer. Like, of course not, right? That's not going to work. But
Not yet.
yeah, not yet. But so that's the first. That's sort of that first. Like, okay, let's just assume that you passed all those hurdles. The question right now is going to be, what do I have to spend to get it in place? If I have to spend $1 million, I could spend that I only have a certain number of millions to spend right now because I'm not generating margin, so I don't have a big pool of capital to spend. I'm using capital to actually do operating, which is bad. So that's why we have to make margin again. But if I spend that $1 million on this and I get a 2x return, but I could spend that same $1 million on automation software to improve my claims efficiency and I get a 10x return, that $1 million is going to the 10x unless there is some incredibly compelling downside risk of my not doing it. I'm going to get sued, or there's such a disparity.
Or there's a federal reg that I've got to do.
A reg, or even like what I used to call the Boston Globe test. I don't know what's the newspaper.
New York Times. We say
test?
Times. Yeah.
Yale discriminating against this class of patients by not doing X, Y, Z. So unless there's some really big red flag reason why, you're fighting against, actually it's not that different than the VCs, right? If they got two companies and one is a 10x return and one looks like a 2x return, the money's going to go into the 10x return unless someone has a really special interest in that company. So I think the next thing is, what is the nature of that return? If the nature of that return is half the people in this audience won't have a heart attack next year, well, that's great for society. But if I don't have risk on those patients in the form of that I'm their payer, and they're going to stay in my plan for at least the next 2 years or 5 years, I don't make money. Society does better, but I don't make any money I don't make my money back. This is the problem we were talking about last night. We could create an intervention that would reduce hypertension, control hypertension in the New Haven community. Let's say we could improve it by 50%. That'd be amazing. Who would pay for that? People who would pay for that are people who would otherwise pay for the care, the ED admission, the angioplasty, the rehab, whatever. Well, if they're commercially insured, maybe they're commercially insured by Aetna today, but next year they're insured by Cigna. So Aetna pays the money, but Cigna gets the benefit. Unless they're in a federal or state entitlement program like Medicare or Medicaid, where they're going to be in there the next year, the next 3 years, the next 5 years, and they're going to be still in it, it's really hard to capture that ROI. And even if I do, there's 5 other people claiming that they saved the same ROI because they pushed the low salt diet and they created the walking, the sidewalks to improve, the health of the community walking to and from work. And so I have a friend calls those light green dollars, right? The dark green dollars are the ones you can actually count in your hand. You're paying less for a contract, you're getting more, spine procedures, you can actually count the revenue. So I think that is the problem. And I would say of the ideas that come forward, that we talk about funding or making investments in, of the ones that make it through the gauntlet, 80% are the ones that have real revenue capture associated with them. And then there's about 20% where it's the right thing to do, there's a safety problem you have to fix, the optics are good, like there's other reasons why, but no one's running toward those to embrace them.
It's terrific.
We have just a couple of minutes left, so a quick question about, one of the things I face a lot is students reaching out to me, sometimes first-year Yale undergrads, with amazing ideas and the energy to actually move them forward. And the fixed costs for them to do it are de minimis, and so they're able to actually make quite a lot of progress really quickly. Are we doing enough to foster that and to get that energy? I mean, knowing full well that their age is where the greatest innovation often comes from?
And it's sort of like you put solar panels on your roof, right? I mean, this sort of feels like free energy, right?
Exactly.
They're coming with all
Very
these
good
great
at it, yeah,
ideas.
yeah.
This is another orchestration layer that is missing. We don't have a good middleware layer. And actually, I brought this up in a session we did somewhere else at Yale. I can't remember where it was, but there's a group that now wants to talk about writing an editorial on this. But we don't have in the same way that you could, well, probably not with that phone, but with a lot of phones and your laptop, you can pop out the RAM and pop in bigger RAM,
yep,
right?
yep.
And there's no integration cost, right? It's modularized. We don't have that for digital health applications. We don't have that for most of the ideas that you're talking about. There's a huge vetting process that we have to pay for. There's the integration in
Right.
we have to pay for. There's the creating a secure environment to test this with health data that we have to make sure there's not cyber risk or breach or all these things. The activation energy and cost is really high. It's
On
too
our
high
side,
right
right,
now.
yeah.
On our side,
Right.
to be able to take those great ideas and put them through the ringer a little bit. So what we need is, I think, some kind of sandbox.
Yeah.
A pseudo-epic layer with patients, real patient data, but mixed and matched and blended in a way.
Synthetic data, yeah.
Yeah, sort of, but synthetic data that's derived from real data so that it's real enough
Yeah.
that you could at least take it for a test, for shakedown cruise. And if it survived that, geez, now there's something here, let's go to the next step. We need a stage gate that's easy to access. Not so easy to access that anyone throws garbage in it.
Right.
But just enough of a barrier that you got to be committed, but it's not
There's a
impossible. It's not
gate to-
American Gladiator. Like
right.
it's just a hurdle.
That's great.
You know, one of the great things, Howie, at Yale is that, especially in recent years, we've just had just amazing recruitments. Lee Schwam's one of them. You know, it's like
Absolutely.
home run for us to be able to get you to come down. I know you're a fan now of the area, and you're really a Yaley, which we're very proud of. And anyway, we really thank you for your energy. And this connection between the health system, the university, the entrepreneurial and innovation, arms within Yale are essential. And you're right in the middle of it. Anyway, much appreciate everything you're doing.
Well, thank you guys so
very
much. It's
much.
great to be here.
Howie, we made it.
We made it.
Come on,
We
I didn't
made
make fun of you, nothing.
No, well, a little bit. But
I love you, Howie.
so anyway, it has been a pleasure to do this with all of you this week. We'll be back next week with the usual episode. If you want to reach out to us, you can find us on social media of any type or by email at health.veritas@yale. I'm just making it up right now.
Thanks to Miranda Schaefer,
Exactly.
Inez Gil,
Inez
Sophia
Gil,
Stump, and
right.
and all the people that actually make this podcast possible.
Yep. Thank you
so
very
thank you all.
much.
Thank you.
Thanks for doing it.